It all started on what should have been a perfectly ordinary Saturday morning. The sun was rising slowly, cutting across the rooftops of a quiet suburban neighborhood where everything always looked neat, measured, and controlled. The lawns were all trimmed to the same height, the shutters painted in approved shades of beige, and the driveways all gleamed with freshly power-washed concrete. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked perfect on the outside, but if you lived there long enough, you'd discover the cracks running beneath the surface. For John, a hard-working man who had bought his house just a few years earlier, this was supposed to be his dream community. Safe, quiet, family-oriented. But the truth was that life under the thumb of the Homeowners Association wasn't as peaceful as the glossy brochures had promised. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter tucked neatly under his windshield wiper one morning. At first glance, John assumed it was junk mail or some local flyer, but when he unfolded the crisp white paper, his heart sank. It was an official notice from the HOA. According to them, John had violated the community's parking rules. The violation, parking in his own driveway. The letter stated in stern, cold wording that his vehicle was parked in a manner inconsistent with community guidelines. The guidelines apparently required all cars to be parked inside the garage overnight. John's driveway was wide and spacious, and his car wasn't blocking the road, the sidewalk, or even a neighbor's view. But that didn't matter to the HOA. What mattered was control, and this was the first strike. At first, John thought it was some kind of clerical mistake. Surely no sane person could issue a fine for a car parked neatly in its own driveway. He shrugged it off, crumpled the letter, and tossed it into his recycling bin. But a week later, another letter arrived, this one more severe. The HOA wasn't backing down. The new notice declared that he had been fined $100 for failing to comply. If the issue was not corrected immediately, the fine would escalate. And this wasn't just an idle threat. The HOA bylaws made it clear. Fines could accumulate daily, and unpaid balances could result in legal action or even foreclosure. John was stunned. This was his property, his driveway. He had paid for every square foot of concrete, every blade of grass on that lawn, and yet here was a committee of strangers telling him how he could use it. Over the next few days, John started paying closer attention to the neighborhood. He noticed that while some residents followed the garage parking rule religiously, others didn't. Cars sat in driveways overnight, and no one seemed to bother them. But when John parked his, it became an instant violation. Something wasn't adding up. It didn't take long for him to figure out why. His neighbor across the street, a woman everyone whispered about behind closed doors, just so happened to be the HOA president. Her name was Deborah, but most neighbors had another name for her, Karen. She was the type who thrived on control, who walked the sidewalks with a clipboard in hand, inspecting lawns and bushes like a general preparing for war. And now, it seemed, she had set her sights on John. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't about community guidelines or keeping up appearances. This was personal. John debated with himself for days. Should he comply just to keep the peace? Should he squeeze his car into his garage every night, even though he preferred using that space for storage and tools? Or should he fight back? The third letter made the decision for him. This time, the fine had doubled, and the language of the notice was even harsher. The HOA was threatening to place a lien on his property if he didn't pay. That was the breaking point. John had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let some petty neighborhood tyrant dictate how he could live on land that was legally his. He decided then and there, he wasn't going to roll over, he was going to fight. What John didn't know yet was just how far this fight would go. He didn't know that his quiet suburban neighborhood was about to become a battlefield, one that would draw in neighbors, lawyers, and even city officials. What started as a simple fine for parking in his own driveway would soon spiral into something much bigger, something that would shake the entire community to its core.